like everybody just watched Oppenheimer, right? And we were like, oh my God, nuclear weapons. Then sort of science progressed onto nuclear energy. And we had this like huge takeoff. And there was a bunch of really incredible, optimistic sort of science fiction around nuclear batteries and nuclear space travel and all this crazy stuff that was going to happen. And we built all these reactors. How did that turn?
So I think it's a really interesting question, and it's obviously complicated, but from what I can tell, one of the core things was there was a lot of people who really wanted to abolish all things nuclear. They wanted to do that because they thought the best way to decrease the likelihood of there being another atom bomb going off is just to basically try to forget the technology. That's kind of a problem for a few reasons. One is just once the cat's out of the bag, you can't really forget that knowledge. It's already permeated the whole culture of humanity and people know how to do this. So for certain groups who might want to do it, that knowledge is out there. But then this comes back to the whole waste issue, which I think is one of the most interesting issues in nuclear. First, it's really important to acknowledge that during the kind of weapons testing era, there was a lot of irresponsible treatment around waste, just dumping carelessly and so on. But when you look at nuclear waste from the perspective of civilian nuclear power, it just was handled way more carefully. There's way more stringent rules around it. It's just one of the most interesting topics because there's such a fear around it. And yet nobody's ever been harmed so much as, let alone killed by nuclear waste. There's a super small amount of it. So the entire history of nuclear power production in the US, you could take all that waste produced and it would fit on a football field stacked roughly 10 meters high. There's kind of this stark contrast between the perception of nuclear waste and the reality. I think some people kind of are confused by that. But what's interesting is I think there was a cohort of people who did understand that, but they purposefully kind of created a little bit of, I don't want to call it a lie, but just misinformation around how dangerous waste really is and leveraged that as a tool to try to abolish nuclear as a whole, whether it's the weapons or the energy source. I think that's really what society has been trying to untangle for the past number of decades is maybe there is a way for society to leverage the amazing properties of nuclear power without leveraging the bomb. I think society is capable of that, but that's been a major sticking point, I think, that's caused a lot of the slowdown.